We're now joined by podiatrist Steve Thomas from Body Focus Podiatry in Bentley East. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
No problem. Happy to be here.
We talk to our participants a lot about how important preparation is for an endurance hike, like the Great Aussie Hike. What impact does that have on someone's feet?
Well, it's going to have a huge impact. The total force that's going through your foot with that length of walk is huge, and it's really important that the foot is prepared for it, and not just the muscles, the actual skin itself, skin and nails. They will respond to training. So if you're training semi-regularly, your skin will toughen up. You will be not immune to blisters, but blister-proof a little bit, as well as the muscular conditioning as well. It's essential that you're doing your preparation training so that when you do attempt this long walk, your body is really ready for it.
So is there anything else they can do to prepare other than just going out and doing all these training walks?
There is stuff. Yeah, you wanna make sure that your gear is adequate. So footwear obviously is the first thing that comes to mind. However, wearing the right shorts, wearing the right t-shirt, they're all really important because you're going to get chafing in other areas, not just the feet.
And what about nail care? Is there anything they could be doing, even just looking after their nails in the lead up?
Yeah, so I'll be having them relatively short. Don't cut them in the 2 days prior because your risk of ingrown toenails is quite high post cutting. So probably the week before, give them a decent clip and a file. Don't go hacking away or digging around too deep. And if you are a bit unsure or if you have a history of ingrown toenail, perhaps go see a podiatrist a week or two prior and get it done professionally.
And again, that prevention of just getting professional help before can often save not needing as much professional help afterwards.
Yeah, you don't want to be walking for 8 hours with ingrown toenail. That would be agony.
What would you recommend if somebody was walking along course and started to feel a hot spot in their foot?
Yeah, I think if you feel a hot spot, you want to get onto it straight away. Because once the skin starts blistering, your options are very limited. So there are some great anti-chafing creams out there which you can use to reduce the friction over the skin. I'm not a big fan of preventative taping, and some people do that. Yeah, unless you're doing it regularly and you know that it works for you, I wouldn't attempt to do it because the taping itself can curl and it can create additional hot spots. So I wouldn't be doing additional preventative taping if it's not something you're regularly doing.
I was going to say, we're pretty big into don't do anything new on the day.
Yeah.
It has to be stuff you're very used to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for us, the large majority of people who end up in pain or distress along the course is because of blisters. That's the number one
Yeah.
issue. A lot of them are pretty determined to get to the finish line. So us as the event crew looking after them, it's pretty horrific to watch them knowing every step's quite painful.
Yeah.
Are blisters inevitable, or can people do things to try and minimize their chances?
They're definitely not inevitable. There are many people who walk long distances, run longer distances, and don't suffer from blisters.
Yeah.
Look, and I'll go back to it again. It's preparation is key. You need to be doing long kilometers prior to the event to toughen the skin up a little bit. Check your equipment to make sure that it's not rubbing in areas that you don't want it to. And see how your skin responds to the anti-chafing cream and things like that. So prevention is always the best. And then on the day, if you do feel like you're getting a blister, then you need to double down on the anti-chafing cream to see if that helps. Change socks. Excess moisture in the shoe is a real killer on feet. So if you're walking all day, I'd be doing minimum 2 changes of socks in that day, minimum.
So would you put the anti-chafing cream on, change the socks at one of our wellness stops and keep going. So make sure that they're doing both of those things.
Absolutely. Yep. Keep reapplying the anti-chafe cream and change the socks.
So my next question was, do you have any recommendations for things people should carry on course or with their support crew for the longer distances? I'm already put on that list, extra socks, anti-chafing cream. Anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, so I think your first aid blister care is probably something that you're going to need to be prepared for as well. If the blister does occur, it's not going to end your race, but it can be quite painful. So there is you can start taping once it is blistered. So I'd be careful with the sports tape, the rigid sports tape. They do they can start to bunch up and create more pressure spots. So a very thin, in fact, I've got some here I can show you.
That's great.
So it's what we call a fixation tape. So this generally goes under a sports tape if we're doing a strapping. It's much thinner. It can bunch up a little bit, but it's not. It's not. It's going to be a nice kind of gentle adhesive to keep the blister down and not stop it from puffing up too much. So that's what I would recommend.
So we've talked about bringing multiple pairs of socks. Do you have any recommendations what people should be thinking about with a sock?
I do a fair bit of trail running, some long trail runs, and I've started using the toe socks, and I've found them to be quite helpful. I also think thick socks, like a thicker sock, is a really good idea too, to give you that kind of cushioning buffer. And then
one thing we always worry about is when we see people coming along at the start line with very low cut socks.
Yeah. Well, if you're used to wearing a low cut, then that's okay for you. But yeah, definitely a low cut sock, you're opening yourself up to a lot of scratches and potential risk of infection. So I'd definitely be wanting that sock to be mid calf as a minimum.
Or at least something that's going to be staying up over your heel. We see people, they slide under the shoe and they get a lot of
yeah. And then you'll also find you'll get a lot of rocks and debris in those low cut socks as well.
I always talk to people, that's probably a question we get asked every day, is what should I be looking for in a shoe? And so we always talk about making sure that there's room for your toes to expand because they're walking such long distances. And again, we don't know what the weather's going to be like. Making sure that the heel's quite secure in the shoe. We see that a lot when people aren't fitted correctly and that friction at the back causes them a lot of grief. And then obviously we're massive fans of lugs. On the bottom of all the shoes. It saves a lot of time. Do you have anything to add to that list?
No, I think you've nailed it there. So you need grip. You need a correct fitting shoe. So people do tend to wear their shoes a little bit tight, and your foot is guaranteed going to swell over the course of the day. So you need some expansion room. And the heel slippage at the back, as you mentioned, that's one of the number one causes of blistering.
So definitely, if people are going out to get those shoes, make sure that you're ticking those 3 things off. How important is it not to wear a new shoe on the course?
It's essential, definitely. Yeah, a new shoe.
That was laughable.
Yeah, you're taking a massive risk by wearing a new shoe on the day, even if it feels good in store. Like it's completely different to walking 30 plus Ks in compared to the store. So you want to be training in that shoe for at least 1 month prior. So you want to be doing at least minimum 50 kilometers in that shoe before I would attempt to do a run or walk of any distance.
So the Great Aussie Hike, we got our name because hike actually, when you look it up in the dictionary, it means a really, really, really long walk, which is obviously what we're doing. However, a lot of people go into whatever shop they've decided to purchase shoes from, and they say to the salesperson, I'm doing a hike. And they come out with a big, heavy boot, which is the perfect shoe for certain hikes, but not necessarily the right shoe for us. We recommend staying as light as possible because they're not carrying big, heavy packs with all their tents and gear and food and stuff like that. But instead, they're walking an extraordinary long way. When Luke and I were looking around for a shoe that we could recommend for this event, we found the Oboz Kabatic, because that's actually what they're now calling a fast hike because it's so light. Do you recommend a light shoe over a heavier boot for this type of walk?
Yes, for this type of walk, absolutely. If I was doing this walk, I would be wearing a trail runner.
Yep.
Gore-Tex trail runner, yeah, with a decent stack height underneath, so a lot of cushioning and a slight rocker bottom, and probably a drop of about minimum 6 millimeters. So that's a little lift under your heel to help with forward propulsion. I would be staying well clear of a, high top, heavy hiking boot.
There's no looks quite nice to them with the elevations. There's no big mountains to transverse.
Yeah, if you're not climbing, Mount Hotham or Everest, then there's no need for that.
The elevation is over quite a few kilometers, so it's
Yeah.
going to be hard for them to even notice. We always like to finish up by saying what would be your top tips and tricks that you would recommend to our walkers in regards to feet. Anything else you'd like to mention? Our whole aim is for them to finish with a huge smile on their face. So what would you recommend they do to get to finish that way?
Yeah, I would say preparation. I'm going to come back to it again. You need to be doing Ks, even if it's, it's not, you don't just have to do big long walks, 10 plus kilometers. If you're doing 3 to 5 kilometers a day or 5 days a week, that's going to make a huge difference when you get to the long hike.
If they haven't already, download that training program, get it on the fridge and start following it.
Yeah.
Exactly what they're being instructed to do. But yeah, we're huge on preparation. So that's great to hear. So anyone who'd like to see Steve in person, he's available for appointments at Body Focus Podiatry in Bentley East. We're just popping that website up on the screen now for you to go and chase him down. So thanks so much for your time, Steve, and providing such great advice for all our teams. No doubt this will help keep everyone pain-free, happy, hopefully blister-free, and so they can all have a big dance at the finish line.
Excellent.
Thanks, Steve.